Hello, everyone. I'm Kelsey Lemon, Product Marketing Engineer for the VCF Division here at Broadcom, and I want to welcome you to the final part of our three-part series where we're going to align VMware Cloud Foundation's capacity management capabilities to some practical use case scenarios for capacity planning. And so again, this series is really intended to equip everyone here again with both conceptual and practical knowledge on how to manage capacity inside of VMware Cloud Foundation. And so at the end of this three-part series, you're going to be able to leverage AI-driven analytics to manage your capacity. You're going to be able to understand and perform practical tasks in capacity management and VCF operations. Again, we've already looked at how to assess capacity. We've already looked at ways in part two on how to optimize capacity. And so in this third part here, it's really around the planning aspect, right? Showing you how you can run various scenarios to anticipate costs, risks, and even resource requirements. And with all this information and all that data, you're ultimately able to make informed business and IT decisions because, again, you're going to be able to correlate technical capacity insight with cost savings, those performance improvements, and even that budgetary planning aspect. And ultimately, again, support those long-term business strategies by really ensuring that IT is scalable and reliable. And with that, let's just go ahead and jump into this third part. And so VCF supports infrastructure planning. And so let's just say you're faced with the scenario of starting a new project or even ending an existing one, right? So you may ask yourself, what's the financial impact of both scenarios? Well, with VCF, it can actually help you answer questions just like that because with VCF, you can actually do cost and capacity planning for both traditional and hyperconverged infrastructures. You're able to use a predictive what-if scenario that can actually be combined and ran against infrastructure resources to determine the cost of adding new hosts or even removing existing ones. So let's just take a look at a scenario where we're starting a new project. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get an assessment of my current capacity. And after checking, it appears that I'm going to be running out of capacity in 109 days. And so let's just see the financial impact of adding a new host with our infrastructure planning tool. And as I'm creating this what if scenario, I'm specifying the location of my host, complete with server details such as make, model, CPU, memory, the whole nine, right? I'm able to do that. And after I run the scenario, VCF is going to display the results. And so in this case, it's telling me that a $2,600 investment will extend my CPU and memory capacity for over a year. And of course, this what if scenario can be shared with my extended team before committing to move forward with the addition of that new host to support this new project. I'm able to do that just by exporting this out for the whole team to review. VCF also supports workload planning, and with it, you can actually get in front of planning for new people and VMs and even the addition of new resources. And so this is really, really ideal if you need to know the impact of adding or removing people in VMs and whether or not those actions will fit within an existing or new cluster, right? And so with VCF, you can foresee all of these costs and avoid urgent emergency buys, which are almost always more expensive, and you can even avoid downtime with this tool due to capacity changes. So let's just take a look at a situation where we're onboarding a new team that'll need VMs to support their business applications. And of course, before we commit to any plans, whether we're looking at working within our existing environment or simply by adding new VMs or hosts to existing clusters that are already available, or if we're even considering the option of adding completely new VMs to an entirely new cluster. And with VCF, it can actually help us understand the financial impact of additional workloads for both options so that we can, again, make that informed decision. So let's just walk through the process of creating that scenario that I just described. So I'm going to specify a location. I'm going to tell VCF that I would like to explore the option of adding a new cluster complete with new servers. And as I'm specifying the details and including the information on the type of servers that I like, I just want to point out again that VCF isn't creating anything yet. I'm just simply adding this information for testing purposes, if you will. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to finish up my scenario by adding the details about the workload that I would have supported. And then as I'm running this scenario, you can see that VCF is telling me that this particular scenario won't work, but it does provide me a recommendation on how to achieve my goal. And I also want to point out that if my scenario did work out, VCF would also tell me if I could accomplish the same scenario with less servers. And so with that, let's just go ahead and adjust my scenario to align with VCF's recommendation by increasing the number of servers to 3 and running that scenario again. So let's just go ahead and make this modification. And as you can imagine, the updated workload planning scenario does fit, and VCF also breaks down the cost. And these results, again, they can be exported for reporting purposes before I commit to the scenario and again make that plan real. And along those lines, perhaps, you've wondered, how much the cost would be if I were to move my workloads across different data centers or clusters in my private cloud, right? Well, with VCF and its migration planning capabilities, you can evaluate the possibility of moving workloads across different data centers. You can do exactly that. And you can also compare the cost of workloads across these various data centers as well to really help you optimize and decide on the best fitting data center for the workload that you're considering, right? And so let's just see this feature in action. So I'm going to go back to my planning tool and I'm going to create a new what if scenario that will allow me to see the cost of moving my workloads to 3 different data centers that I'm considering, right? And as I walk through the process, I'm going to give my scenario a name. I'm going to select the data centers that I like to include in the comparison. I can either configure a new application profile or even import an existing one. Say, for example, VMs that are running Linux. And as you can imagine, right, the cost varies from one data center to another depending on cost drivers such as server, facility, labor, license, the whole 9, right? And so with this, right, this data center comparison actually solves this problem by allowing you to select the data center that suits your requirements, is the least expensive, and has adequate capacity. And with that, this concludes our capacity management journey. Capacity management, to sum it all up, right? It isn't about just keeping the lights on. It's about future-proofing your IT. With tools like VMware Cloud Foundation, you can stop firefighting and start planning with confidence. So whether you're worried about running out of capacity in 54 days or just want to make sure that you're not paying for stuff that you don't use, VCF can actually help you turn chaos into clarity.